Welcome to the Invincible Innovation Show, the podcast for changemakers. Each week, I talk to the most fascinating entrepreneurs and innovation leaders about innovation, strategy, and design. Hey everyone, welcome to a talk about pitching, storytelling, and much more. Welcome to Invincible Innovation Live Show. I'm so glad that you're here. I'm Mazor, Kario, product innovation and value creation expert, and I have a very special guest today. Hi, Abigail.
Hello.
My guest today is Abigail Tenembaum, co-founder and CEO of Virtuoso, communication consulting and training company. And I'm so happy that you're here. I'm sure it's going to be really interesting. And we met in the past and talked a few times, and I'm sure it's going to be fascinating.
And thank you for inviting me, Adi.
Sure. We're live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook, and you're so invited to join the discussion and ask questions. And now, because we wanted to focus, you're dealing with so many things like storytelling and how to talk in front of an audience and how to build a speech. But I wanted to start with like a few top tips for the perfect pitch, because I know everyone is more or less asking about it. For sure, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a leader, if you're just trying to pitch an idea to your boss, whatever, it's so important.
Yes, and it's interesting the use of the word pitch, because we tend to think about it lately as the startup pitch or the pitch when you come and you have a short amount of time to sell your idea, and I really think that that the pitch is something we do all the time. A job interview is a pitch. Any request for additional funds from our board is a pitch. An IPO roadshow is a pitch. All of that, anytime that we have limited amount of time and we want to move our audience or convince them of a new idea, I see it as a pitch. Even a job interview, even selling ourselves. So you asked me something that also I found interesting, which is looking for that perfect pitch. And I think that one of the things that maybe also something that can be alleviating for the audience is I don't think we need to strive for perfection. I don't think perfect is the ultimate goal. I would suggest, rather than perfect, maybe ask for what would be the most effective pitch, what would be the most memorable pitch I can make. And because I haven't seen an audience say, wow, yes, I'm going to buy into this idea because the pitch was perfect. That's usually not, and there's a gap between what we look for as speakers, what we think is our goal, versus what the audience really looks for.
Sure.
So you wanted how many tips for the most effective?
Let's go for 3 to 5. I think it's a good start.
It's a good start. So it's yes, you want me to condense everything to 5.
That's why I started with this one.
So if you think about communications as strategy, content, and delivery, let's look for a tip or two on each.
Great.
So in strategy, I would say the number one tip that I would give people is don't just have one pitch or one text to rule them all. Really think strategically before every meeting, every call that you have, every interview. Think strategically about that specific situation and how to adjust your baseline story. For example, then there's a few things to think about. The basic one is you want to move your audience towards your goal. So the more that you can define what's the goal, and the more that you can understand who's the audience, this specific audience, the more there are chances that will succeed. So that's strategy, one small yet long tip. As far as content, I would say, well, there's so much about content, but one of them would be in this era of collective ADHD and multiple messages, it's really hard to cut through the noise and to be memorable.
Right.
So the more that you're clear about if you had to say your message in one sentence, what would that be? What would be the inevitable conclusion? The more chances are that you'll be able to communicate it in a way that will be sharp and the audience will remember. So that, as far as content, there's a universe to talk about, but I'll start with that. And finally, as far as delivery, because as much as your strategy can be great and your content is fabulous, eventually it's about you and about how you show up. So as far as delivery, there's, again, a universe. But one thing that I would say is really a must that a lot of people neglect is rehearsal. Is rehearsal out loud, ideally in front of people, not in front of the mirror, because the mirror is not, it gives us information that's not very useful. But catch someone in your team, catch a friend, an aunt in a family dinner, and say, hey, do you have 5 minutes? I want to rehearse. So the first time you say it out loud is not in the time where it's most high stakes.
Yeah. But we talked about in the past, there is this limit. So how much rehearsal do you want to have? And how much, like sometimes it pumps you up with energy and you're a bit anxious because you're rehearsing it again. What is that like golden line that you're saying, like, that's the best time to say, yeah, I'm ready? Because you could say, I'm never ready, and still be anxious when you're coming to talk, right?
And by the way, it's okay. It's okay if you're nervous when you're coming to talk. There's um, a second grader once asked Meryl Streep, she was speaking to second graders, and he asked her, do you still get nervous before you go on stage or before you film? And she said, the moment that I stop getting nervous, I'll quit this profession. And it's really
Yeah.
because it means that it's important to us. So it's okay to be nervous. Let's not, I would say, don't rehearse until the point that you're indifferent. If you're indifferent, nobody cares.
Yeah.
It's so personal, the thing with rehearsals. I would say it's really personal. Some people, they like to rehearse for, Steve Jobs used to rehearse for 2 or 3 days straight and for weeks
Wow.
in advance. So he was like the extreme to one end, and then there's some people for once or twice that they just say the text or they say the ideas, that's enough for them. I think you have to find your sweet spot.
The thing is, like, how much do you want to be very like connected exactly to the specific words in the text, or how much you just want to convey the idea? And when you talked about content, I thought that you would say something like a story which is moving, related to your emotions, people relate to how they feel, and I think it's related to how much rehearsal, so how much technical you want to be with it, right? Do you see the connection between the two?
Absolutely. And as far as content, I said it's a universe. So definitely, definitely tell a story. Definitely have data and emotions whenever you have whenever the opportunity. So there's a lot to say about that. But there's a notion that, or I see it, I saw it a lot when I worked or when I work with TED speakers or people who have who really spend a long time rehearsing for a very specific, short, super high stakes situation, and they really want to have it memorized completely. So if you decide to go to that route, the route that you will have it word by word memorized, the important thing is to, I would say, counterintuitively, to over rehearse. There's Chris Anderson, the owner of TED, used to say that there's a moment when you rehearse, when you say the text out loud, there's this moment where you feel a little bit wooden, where you kind of get bored from your text, where you're like, oh no, I'm going to be over rehearsed, and the mistake that people make is when they stop there, because that is almost a hurdle you have to go through. And once you know your text really, in theater, I come from theater originally, they say if they wake you up at 3 a.m., that you'll be able to just say it. So the moment that you don't have to think about your text completely, that maybe ironically allows you to start enjoying it, to start looking for the other things, not searching for the words, but searching for, what am I actually saying? What do I want to do with my to my audience? What is this part about? How can I make it more fun for them? But that requires a lot of work. Most people in the business world don't have the 2 or 3 months to really know it cold and know the text. So in that case, many times the idea is, don't worry so much about the specific words. The audience will never say, oh, this was great because she knew all the words she planned to say in the order she planned. The audience
Yeah.
doesn't know. So it's
Right,
what you
right.
say. They don't like think about what is it that you want to say. What are the key ideas and what's the emotion? What's the time limit? And then flow with that. So there's a
Yeah.
huge range, as you see, and unfortunately or fortunately, there's not one answer to rule them all.
Yeah. We talked about Steve Jobs, and when he comes into and present his like pitch, or it's more than a pitch when he talked, I would say. Um, but it seems so natural. It seems that he's like, yeah, I just came here with my jeans and this like, black turtleneck, And it's not that important for me, like very cool.
I just rolled
And
out of bed and just it occurred to me to say, oh wow, oh
yeah,
yes, and wait, there's more. Yes,
yeah, yeah. And it's surprising that he rehearsed so much and it was so important at first, because you imagine that he had so much to do as a CEO of Apple. That's what you're doing, right?
well, but
But
he understood. There's like I think Netanyahu. If we talk about people who understand the importance of spending, of dedicating, I would say, of dedicating time to how you communicate, it's critical. I mean, you can have Steve Jobs is a great example of that. You can have an amazing innovation, but the basic thing that will move people to buying it is is you and how you communicate it. And
sure.
so in order to make it, again, I originally come from theater, so to me it's obvious that in order to make something look effortless, you have to put tons of effort in it. Think about musicians. Think about Messi, or sports. I mean, Messi, the
Yeah,
the, the football player, soccer player, or about Michael Jordan. Those people make the real time look effortless because there's so much technique and so much rehearsal behind it. So
yeah,
really, and sometimes it's disappointing to people, that to
yeah,
executives I speak to, because they almost like hope that I will give them a secret that will have them. Oh, I can just take that pill, the magic pill, and
yeah,
voila. Well, sorry,
yeah.
it's hard work.
It is. So I could tell you from my experience now. I've been like, for the last like few years, I've been talking a lot in front of people, and I really love it. But at the beginning, especially when I started talking mainly in English, it was very important for me not to miss this specific word that when I wrote it, it was a very, a word that maybe I would not speak when I'm speaking with someone like fluently, but it sounded really, really good. And I felt like much of the energy went there. Like I was so focused on not forgetting the specific, very wise word that I thought about. And I felt that, other than the fact that it was more like the technique, you felt the technique when you heard
Mhm.
someone talking. It was more than that. I felt like, for me, I didn't enjoy talking in front of people, because it was so much, it was a burden, right?
Yeah.
And now,
I'm
like
sorry, I'm
when
laughing.
I yeah, when, you should laugh, because it was. And and now when I think about it, I always tell myself, they never knew what I wanted to say. So if I make a mistake, nobody knows, right? So
And
nobody
so,
knows it.
absolutely. And Adi, what was there? Do you remember that? Was there a moment that switch happened, or was it gradual?
It was gradual, but there was a point I talked in the headquarters of Google in front of hundreds of people, and one of the slides didn't work, and there was like 5 bullets that I didn't see. And that was the point that I knew that I was the only one who knew that there were supposed 5 points was supposed to be on that slide, and I said like two or three of them. But afterwards, after like at the beginning, it was a shock, and afterwards, like nobody knew that, so I
Exactly.
forgot.
Nobody came to you afterwards and said, "Listen, your talk
Yeah,
was great, except for that point where you probably had 5 points, but you only said three." Like,
yeah,
yeah, it's
that was
amazing. It's very. You reminded me of a client I had a few years ago, who, for her, also someone who spoke a lot, and one of the biggest aha moments and the freeing moments was exactly that. Was realizing, oh wait, the audience has no idea what I prepared, and whatever happens in real time, that's it. That's what's supposed to happen. Phew.
yeah. And I heard Maya Angelou, and she said that people will not remember what you told them, but what you made them feel. And for me, and it's something that resonates with me all the time. I believe that is true in every conversation that you have. And when I do that, kind of like the show that we have right now, for me, that's the most important part, because maybe there are like a list of questions and maybe I forgot, or we didn't have time for several of them, but at least we had a very fluent and connected conversation. And for me, it's much more important, because people, actually, this is what moves them, this is what interests them, to see two people connect, or to connect to an idea, or to connect to someone emotionally. So that's how I
I,
see this show and what I'm doing.
I fully agree.
Yeah. So when we're talking about entrepreneurs, I guess that the word storytelling comes up a lot. Yeah.
Yes.
and and how, what do you think makes a really good entrepreneur successful and with storytelling? So and why is it so important to know storytelling? Because everybody's talking about storytelling. So
Everybody's talking about storytelling. I know. I find it
yeah,
very amusing in a way that it's such a new, it's such a buzzword now everywhere, everywhere around the world. It's suddenly caught as the buzzword, as everybody wants storytelling training, and they ask us, "Do you do storytelling?" And I tell them, That's so basic. It's to me, it's like the question of or the trending storytelling. It's almost like, oh, there's a new thing that's trending. It's called breathing. So
yeah.
because if you
By
think
the
about
way,
it,
it is
it
trending,
is.
right?
I know. I know. I was
And
actually
how
when I
to
was
breathe.
yes, it is trending in the same way. I think that
Yeah.
storytelling, in a way, meaning
Mhm.
yes, it's something we've been doing naturally for thousands of years. Probably breathing has been longer than storytelling,
Yeah.
but suddenly we understand that we can if we understand how to do it well, it can have a huge impact, a huge
Right.
effect. In
Right.
breathing, it's on usually on us. In storytelling, it's usually on others. Um,
Mhm.
but so first of all, storytelling is not new. It's probably the most ancient way of communicating that we have. That's the natural way. PowerPoint is not the natural way. Data is not the natural way. But um, so why is storytelling so effective? I think it's because we are really our brains have not evolved a lot since we were hunter gatherers. Um, I don't know, tens of thousands of years ago. I don't know, not that
Yeah.
long as far as
Mhm.
evolution is concerned. So we have changed our environment, we have changed our way of living, but our brains have not caught up yet. So our the hunter gatherer brain, really what it needs to remember is not data, is not bullet points, is things like, oh, that plant, when you see a plant that looks like a heart, be careful, it's poisonous. Or yesterday I went with my dog, because they had dogs, I went with my dogs hunting, and there next to the river I saw a big a herd of deer, so go there. So it's those types of things that's what we needed to know and to understand. So our brain is hardwired to listen to stories and to remember elements of story. So what? So that's a big buzz of storytelling. Now, what I hear in
Yeah.
business a lot is, okay, how do I do it with data, or how do I take? I don't have time to tell a huge story, and I
Yeah.
think there is where um, it's I think it's understanding that stories are a great hack for the brain of our
Yeah.
audiences.
Right.
So rather than say tell a full story, because sometimes we don't have time, it's understanding what are those things in a story that make stories so sticky, and how can we use those in any page, in any communication. For example, something like sensory language, things we can imagine, things that so if we say I saw an animal, I can't imagine it. A deer, I can imagine. Or if we say our product will help. Now I don't have any. Of course, I don't have any example right now that I need one,
Of
because
course.
that's what happens. By the
Yeah.
way, a reason to I haven't done it myself,
Rehearse.
but it's a reason to build your back pocket stories and examples so you can have them
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
time.
Of
But
course.
but I do see it a lot in the business world, where they say, "Well, I can't tell a story about my product that's about the insurance in the cloud." So yes, but you
Yeah.
can tell the story of the data scientist that today, when he goes to put data, he needs to type for 5 hours, and with our solution, he will come in, press one button, and there it appears. So I can have things that I can imagine. Press one button, I can imagine. So that's the
Yeah.
way to see if we have elements of story. Of course, again, it's a universe. I'm bringing just one
Yeah.
small
Of
example. You
course.
don't need a full story. You do need things like sensory language and specific images of a user, for example.
Yeah. When I talk and work with entrepreneurs, I feel that they're very technical in many cases, and therefore they think about things into the details of the technical details, right? Because this is what they're dealing with. And now you're telling them, okay, when you sell the idea, even if it's someone very professional or VC that really doesn't, they do understand the technical stuff, you still need to have this story. It's not enough to talk about the bits and bytes of things, and especially because it's sometimes it's changing and you're pivoting when you're starting with something, and they just want to see this potential, and to imagine a
Exactly.
potential, it's so hard, right?
Yes, you said
Imagine.
something. You said something great. You said imagine the potential. Why? Because I think that the solution for that, or understanding that, first of all, it's understanding that what you said, which is
Mhm.
the technical, the technicalities of the product or the idea are super important, but only if the person is convinced that there's potential there, that it's worth investing in it. So one way to think about it, to bring storytelling elements into that, is to describe what we like to call the world before and the world after. So it's rather than this is my product or this ways, these are the features of ways, but the world before is, imagine you when you came to work today, maybe you got into traffic, maybe it took you much longer than you expected. If you have to plan for a meeting, you sometimes need to go out earlier because you never know what you're going to encounter. But
Right.
with ways, so the world after it, with ways, you will be able to put in the address. People will log in when there's traffic. So in real time, you'll be able to tell which way is the fastest. You'll be saving time, and you'll be able to contribute to other people saving time. So it's already imagining. Let the audience imagine what the world will look like after your solution or your idea is implemented, and then the technicalities are already just like, oh, okay, so how do you do it? Just tell me how you
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
Uh,
And do you think that it's connected to the character of the, like, introverts, it's harder for them to speak in public or to pitch, or if they rehearse, it doesn't matter?
I don't know. I'll say I don't know. I know that, for example, in theater, you have uh, quite a few actors who are introverts, who feel, or like there's something about being on stage sometimes, or being, or going into character, or being, or pitching, or being sometimes, it actually brings the best out of people who otherwise are introverts. I know
Right.
my brother is a super introvert, and he's a professor in the university, and his wife is like, how come you're one of the most successful professors in the university, and at home you're like barely saying anything? So for some people, yes.
Yeah.
uh, for some people that's but I think it is a matter of, first of all, you even saw it yourself. It's so much a matter of experience, right?
Yeah. Of
It's like
course.
when people tell me that they don't like speaking, or they're shy, or they're not sure about it. Usually, what I tell them is the best thing you can do is find more opportunities to speak, because
Yeah.
that's the best way to improve. So I think
Yeah.
that's more than character. It's that, I think, but I don't know.
Yeah, but for me, I could tell you, I'm an extrovert as a person, and I like talking to people. I like talking in general. In general.
Great. So you're in the
So
right profession, no?
yeah, yeah, you're right. But I, when I think about it, it's so different when coming from one to one to one to many, and from going like doing it live and doing it online. So let's talk about like what's the move right now. COVID crisis, everything is online. All the events, all the conferences, everything is online. So what, other than the fact that we are just having this torso and something, right? So, and I always talk with my hands.
Me too.
Many years ago, I when I would just started in my profession, in my business, I created a series of videos, and it was the first time that I really I was caught on camera and video, and I saw myself, and I talked so much with the hands, I didn't really understand that this is what I'm doing. And one of my friends, he called me and he said like, you're talking so much with the hands that because we're working internationally, we think it could be even a bit like it looks like intimidating for people when you talk this way in several cultures. And for me, after I invested so much in
Oh,
in these videos, that was too much,
it's very useful
right?
feedback. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, what can I do now? And it was very surprising for me. So how do you see this, like, what you had in before everybody saw your full body more or less when you're on a stage, and right now it's so different. So what are the things people need to know when they're doing this like move in the last like 2 years?
How to adjust to this new and
Remote.
yes, remote or hybrid.
Yeah.
There's the
Hybrid is much harder as I see, because
oh,
it's like,
hybrid is the hardest. Yes, I came back like 2 months ago, traveled to Europe to go to a huge conference that they did in a firm, the whole leadership of a firm. And because they didn't want to fly everyone, they had one location in Europe, one in the US, and people in Asia, all at the same time, and with one
wow.
stage that had a mirror stage in Europe and in the US, sometimes with two speakers, one from each country. Like it was
Wow.
yes, I know. But the nice thing for the audience is that if things went wrong technically, and they obviously did because
Sure.
it's all new, there's something almost exciting about it. Something like being in something live that you know is raw, that you know is new. That in a way, we started off speaking about perfection. In a way, that's even more attractive than if everything went smoothly. So,
Yeah.
so first of all, I think it's like embracing the imperfection of this, and the fact that I don't know if I'm allowed to say shit, but I will. Shit happens, and it's
Yeah.
okay that it happens. That's the beauty of life. But there are ways to adjust to. I've been since I've worked with TED speakers all over the world. So we've been working with Zoom since 2015 or something. One of the first users. So the transition wasn't that big, but it was big for a lot of our clients. So a few things to keep in mind, I think. One is if attention span is short in human to human in live, it's much shorter on virtual, much shorter. The opportunity to be distracted and look for other things is much bigger, and it's much easier. So we have to think about all the time, how do we not only hook the audience at the beginning, but how do we keep them engaged? Don't be afraid to ask questions. Bring in, if you use slides, you don't just leave the slides there, but go on and off from slide sharing, so there's some dynamism, so there's something going on. Think at every moment. It's not easy, but think at every moment what will keep your audience attention with you rather than anything else. So that's, I think, one thing. Another thing is, as far as make your meetings as short as possible. People will thank you. State the goal from the beginning. That's even more important than in person. Again, because of that attention, I need to have a reason why I'm staying. And as far as your presence, I think one thing is to remember that to create eye contact, it's don't look at the image of the person, look at the camera, um, which is, it's difficult because you don't see a human, but you have to imagine a human. But on the
Yeah.
other hand, it really creates the sense of, wow, that person is looking at me.
Right.
And the nice thing in virtual is you look at one place, which is the camera, and each and every person, whether it's one or 1,000, each and every person feels you're looking at them, like the Mona Lisa. I call it the Mona Lisa effect.
Yeah.
So I think that if you remember those things, hook the audience, have a clear um, goal stated from the beginning, and really look at the camera, I think you'll be much ahead of most people and how they speak on
Yeah.
virtual.
What do you say about like sitting, not sitting? Right now, when I record, I always have this small seat
Are you
that
sitting now?
doesn't have. I'm sitting, but I don't have like a back. For it's only a stool. How is it
Yeah.
called, right?
And why? And if I may ask you, why did you choose to sit in a stool?
Because I felt it's enabling me to move more, and
Hmm.
I feel more like moving, and I feel
Yeah.
that it's you can feel that when I talk, but and it's a feeling for me that I'm on the edge. I'm not like sitting here on a sofa.
Exactly. You don't merge into a couch. I did
Yeah,
a workshop with a group that's going to do panel presentations in a huge conference, and one of the problems, or the challenges to overcome, is that they were going to be sitting on couches, and there's something about
yeah,
the couch that pulls you down, and that doesn't work. You need the energy to go out. So you're
yeah,
doing something that I think is super smart, that you're sitting. I would say, even if people sit with in a seat that does have a back, try not to lean back. Try to stay um, with your energy going forward, because really we can feel that. And there are two things that it enables that are really important physically. What you're doing now is you're allowing your full vocal range to be accessed, because you're living. Think about your voice is like, or your body is like a guitar. So you want to have that whole box, your neck and your chest all aligned and all, so you can access your full voice. Voice is super important, especially on virtual, but not only. And you can breathe, you can fill your lungs, because if you sit back, you constrict the ability to breathe. And we started off by saying breathing is
Yeah.
as important as storytelling.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah,
but
it
it's
is.
really it what will calm us down. It's what will allow the voice to come out. Breathing is really super super important when we communicate.
Yeah. And what about the people who are just standing? They have this.
Great. Standing
You think
desks.
it? Yeah. It's
Why
like, do
not?
you feel it?
Excellent.
Yeah, I think it's more energetic even. I don't have the right like tools, but I think when you're standing, you're more alert, right? It's
Yes,
like when
yes.
you have stand-ups meeting, it's very like fast and you feel it. So
And even when you do a phone call that you don't have a visual, actually in phone call, I always recommend for people to stand, because we can hear the energy when someone is standing versus sitting. Another thing
yeah,
we hear is smiling. We can hear when a person is smiling. We can actually hear that.
yeah.
So that's something you can easily do on virtual.
Yeah, I like a year ago, something like that, I created a voice interface design course, and I had the one part about what can we know about only from hearing. We know
Ooh.
how tall is a person, how what's his size, because we know the posture of the body, and we know so much, not only like men, women, and all of that. We know so much information. If somebody's sick, we know from the way he's breathing. And there are parts like AI trying to understand and recognize patterns of breathing from the voice, and see maybe
Oh
even.
wow.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I wanted to ask you, because we're two women talking about speaking in public, and we know that there are not so many women out there.
Hmm.
And I want to contradict it on the other side, that we know that usually women are really good speakers. They know how to talk. They talk much more than men in usual days, right? So why don't they do this as a professional speaker on stages? What is really preventing them from doing it?
Oh wow. If I knew, the whole issue of women leadership, women's voices is something I feel super passionate about. And I love working with women who are leaders and want to embrace that. And why I know that there are theories. One theory says that if, let's say, for conferences and panels, which is very difficult to find usually, to find women speakers, the theory says that if a man knows something at about 30%, they're like, yeah, of course I can talk about it. But a woman feels that she needs to know it at 100%. Otherwise, she won't even open her mouth or won't even go on stage. Same thing, by the way, happens with, I know, game shows on television, like trivia game shows.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, women are like, why do I need this public humiliation?
yeah,
Um, so I don't know. I don't know if it's something we're taught because we need to be like nice and the good girls, or is it risk aversion? Is it? I don't know, but I think that that it's great that we have more and more women pushing more and more women to go on stages, uh,
yeah.
because
It's
we
really
have something to
important.
say and we often can say it really, really well.
Yeah, I totally agree, and
What do you
and I
think?
think
What do you
it's.
think, Adi? Why are
I
there less women?
I would say that there is something with being like in front of people, standing in front of people, the physicality of your body exposed to people, which make you more aware of the way you talk, the way your body looks, the way, and it's like an additional to usually public speaking, being afraid of public speaking. It's more than that. And I think that you need to be aware that you will not be in full control. So sometimes
Mhm.
maybe someone will say to you something afterwards. Sometimes someone it's you will feel something afterwards. So you need to be aware that you're doing something, and you need to come very open-hearted to it. This is how I see talking in front of people, and being aware that you will not be in full control. Maybe you will forget something. Maybe, I know, the clicker will fall out of your hand. Maybe
Maybe
your
the slide
hair.
with the 5 bullets will not work
Yeah, maybe
in
maybe
front of the
that would
Google, the whole
happen
Google
in
crowd.
front of the Google headquarters, right? So, and I think that we're not built to take risks. We
Mhm.
like being courageous, taking risks is it's not feminine, you know. So this is how I see it.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe
Yeah.
it's also a hunter-gatherers gone wrong because the hunters needed to go and hunt, and the women stayed and like took care of minimizing risk. But I don't know. I'm just
Yeah.
making up a complete because we
Who
because
knows?
that's another thing to remember as communicators is that our brains may, or our audience's brain will try to make sense and make a story because that's just how we
Yeah.
work. So it's better that we make the sense for the audience than that they try to make their own story.
Yeah. So we don't have much time. You're almost done, and I have like like a list of questions, like just as we talked. But you know, many people think about TED, and you know, like you're a global speaker trainer for TED. So could you tell us a bit about the magic of this conference, and why is it so successful, and how do you prepare people, you know, to have this like 20 minutes, 15 minutes of saying what you want to say?
Um, wow, huge question.
Yeah.
So the interesting thing about TED to me is not only the conference itself, but how much it affected everything about how we communicate. It started from I worked in companies that decided to have a TED-like events. Today, when I work with CEOs, etc., they would usually not speak for more than 20 minutes. There's very few who will speak longer. The whole thought is let's have it short. The whole idea um, of using stories and the idea of bringing yourself of that you are important, that talking about self is important. I think that all of that came from TED is interesting and it's great. And also the notion of a talk, of speaking in spoken language, not in high, as you said, when you spoke in English, that you would use words that you would never use in
Yeah.
everyday life. And TED has brought the idea of the opposite. No, no, no. We want the idea we have in conversation only for 12 18 minutes on stage with cameras all rehearsed, but we want the same person. We want that authentic, raw, if possible, experience. And so the first time I've worked with TED TED Global was 2013, and since then I've worked with over 100 of speakers and tons of conferences, and it's really the journey of preparing to a TED Talk is very personal. Some for some people it's faster and easier, but I would say it's never linear. It's never, you don't start from a point and then you go and get to the other point. There are a lot of, you write a text, you say it out loud, it sounds not so good, you rewrite it, you find your idea, you change your idea, you find great stories. Then suddenly you find a story. I had a speaker that he had this whole talk and he rehearsed it in front of his friend, and his friend said, "Hey, wait a minute, you have this story that you have in the middle? That can be a great opening." And so that changed 2 weeks before the event. So I think also the magic of TED is the notion that you can take complex ideas and make them available for a large audience, which is also the challenge of working with TED speakers who are, for example, scientists. How do you take a scientist who has been working on something for years in their lab, and now they have 12 minutes to explain it to a general audience they've never spoken to, and go ahead, do it. So it's,
Yeah.
and I find it as a very rewarding thing when it works.
Yeah. And tell us about the process. They don't write it themselves and rehearse themselves and that's it. That's why you have trainers, right? So do you have different trainers for the content and for the story and then for the way they appear on stage, or it's like the same person guiding you all through the process, or
So TED works more and more with curators who are from that topic, working specifically and deeply with the speakers on their talk, because then they bring their point of view, they bring what they know, they know that they have depth to work very closely. And then there's usually that's today, that has changed in the last few years. And then
Mhm.
there's usually a speaker coach who would work with them on making it conversational, on making it lively. Although a lot of the curators have learned to do that too.
Yeah.
In the past, a lot of our work with TED speakers has been to be, I would say, to represent the audience. That's how I see the role of a speaker coach in that sense, meaning
Mhm.
to be the ear of the audience and the eyes of the audience, who will say in the text, even that the speaker will write, we will have rehearsal, the speaker will say the text, and then we can say things like, that doesn't sound like you in conversation, or what about when you said that, or a general audience will not understand that, that's jargon. So or what about data? Some audiences really need data. You have a lot of story. Or where are the emotions? Some audiences need emotions. So it's making sure that all the elements are there, and then it's having rehearsals to bring it to a level that it's conversational, that it doesn't feel
Yeah.
like a person is saying a text for 12 minutes, which is super difficult for people who haven't been through acting school for 3 years.
Yeah. It is difficult. And do you know the podcast The Moth? Do you know
Of
it?
course.
I really, really love it. And when you talked about like what is different with TED and what's the difference, I think that if nobody knows, it's like one of the best podcasts ever. People telling their own stories, and I think that it started with the conference, right? So
Mhm.
there are lots of like speakers giving you the information, and you're getting smarter, and you're feeling very smart. And when they thought about like telling the story and more like what you have in the Moth, people really talking about themselves, it's so much more interesting and it's so much
Right.
more than just a conference, right? So I don't know what came first, the Moth or TED speakers. I don't know.
I don't know. TED has been around since 1984, which is something people don't always know. But
Wow.
I know. Yes, I know.
Wow.
Um, I don't know about the moth. That's you gave me something to
Yeah.
Google after our call.
I know that they started with live shows, so it was not
Right.
maybe and it was in the community. They started with
Hmm.
communities and telling their own stories within communities. So it started very differently from a different point of view, I guess. But so you got a recommendation for a podcast too. So. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I really enjoy talking to you, and I'm sure
Likewise.
yeah, and we could have another one because I'm sure we have much more to talk about. So where could people find more about you and hear from you and contact you?
Well, first of all, the website, you can go to the website of my company, which is virtuoso with a Z or Z.com. And also, I would welcome people emailing me if they want. It's Abigail, Abigail, at virtuoso.com. Or find me on LinkedIn, on Facebook. I love having conversations and hearing from people about things that work in the real world and questions that they have. So
Sure.
I'm happy to continue conversations with people.
Yeah, and I love talking to you. So
Likewise.
that's a really so it was fun. And to all of you change makers out there, thank you for joining us. And if you want to hear more about what I do, just go to invincibleinnovation.com and I'll see you next week with another innovative, insightful talk. See you. Bye
Thanks,
bye.
Adi. Bye.
I'm Mazor Kario, and you've been listening to the Invincible Innovation Podcast. Make sure to visit our website, invincibleinnovation.com, where you can learn more about our programs and my book, Innovating Through Chaos. I'll be waiting for you next week in our next episode. Thank you for listening.